You're listening to Two Babies in a Business, a podcast where Peter and I take a time out from our day-to-day to talk about all of the important topics, I guess, when it comes to business, life, and being parents and being partners in all of those three areas. So we've got our big bin of things. We've got a little green one, which we know is a Peter topic.
Yay. What is it?
I don't know. I'm looking it up. You've made it quite tight here. Intuition. And the power of letting go, but intuition, which I think is, quite a topic coming off of our last discussion around quitting.
Yes. So let me just start off this one by saying that it's my goal of 2023 to be in touch with, rely on, use, feel, understand my intuitive side as much as possible. So I listened to an author ebooks by a guy named Mo Gaudat quite a bit. He used to be the head of Google X, and he talks a lot about sort of feminine side and masculine side, and intuition in his understanding or mind or thoughts is really getting in touch with your feminine side. So and being is a feminine trait is kind of how he describes it, and so I guess my goal in 2023 is to really get in touch with my feminine side, and which means really my intuition. And so I love this topic. That's my introduction to that.
I mean, I think you've been getting in touch with this side for some time now. We often joke with one another that you're like a bit of a crier now. In some circumstances, you're a bit more emotional than you once were, but I think you've been striving to do that for a while. I think, gut, and to me, intuition is gut, right? That gut feeling. I have always, I guess, had pride in the fact that I feel like I'm very in tune with my gut. Ever since a young age, I can remember, you get that feeling in your gut, in your tummy, and I think us as a couple, we have a very strong, sense of intuition. We make decisions very quickly. I think it really makes our friends quite nervous and how quickly we make decisions, but I think intuition, gut feelings, getting in touch with your feminine side, whatever you call it, I think it's something that we, whether consciously or subconsciously, we have really relied on through the last, decade and a half.
Yeah, I would say that for me, thank you for saying that. I've been doing this for a while, but for me, I think that I guess I'll describe it as I know my life is going in a good way when I'm going with the flow of my gut or my intuition, as opposed to getting in my own way with my head. And so there's been times in my life where things are not going well, and my observation of life is when those situations are times when I'm way in my head and I'm doubting myself, and I'm telling myself stories that are not true or whatever, getting in my own way. And I'm just going to maybe just before I close this thought, share a completely different thought. But in some of the books I've been listening to recently about health and gut health and this and that, and an interesting thing I learned about, there's a nerve called the vagus nerve. It's the longest nerve in our body, and it basically connects our gut to our brain, and it actually goes through our diaphragm. So it just sort of one that kind of explains to you how breathing is so central to a lot of things. But the neat thing is that scientists have discovered that for every signal that goes down from our brain to our gut through our vagus nerve, there's 10 signals that go from our gut to our brain. So the theory with some scientists is that really our brain is actually mostly in our gut. And we've learned a lot about gut health and things like that recently in terms of food and nutrition. And I can't help to think that all of those things are all those things work together, right? So if you have good gut health, good nutrition, good fitness, your breathing is good, then you probably, I think, are more in touch with your intuition as well, or have maybe better intuitive sense. I don't know, but it seems to me like all those things make sense or kind of work together.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, intuition for me too is I'm going to bring it into business now. I'm the CEO, but we talked about this, like largely my role is operations, right? Like I think if, we were in a traditional, had traditional titles, I would be the COO, driving towards kind of that. And often I know I am not involved in every client, obviously day to day. I am not involved with, every staff thing. I, feel like we try to empower our team to solve problems and be solution oriented. But definitely, that gut feeling when something is off, I think is a very powerful role or a very, very powerful trait or skill for a business owner. And I like, your sub point here and your sticky note of the power of letting go is understanding as a business owner or that chief operating officer or that director of marketing or whatever your title is, knowing what to let go of and stop, being in the minutia of, and knowing what to focus on. I actually had this conversation with one of our clients. It was probably a year ago now, where it was, the CEO of an organization. We were, it was a full retainer. So we were doing everything for them from SEO to public relations to social media to website. And he just was obsessed with the social media. Every line, every image, every whatever. And, I think if you've worked with CIPR before, or if you know Peter and I, like, obviously we're not doing anything too crazy on social media, especially for our B2B clients, unless that's who they are. We come up with strategies first. We're a strategy first organization. So, obviously leadership is going to have their eyes and give that general, here's the flow of how things will go. We come up with templates that are pre-approved. These are the templates we're using for visuals. And the CEO, I'd get emails from him at, 11 o'clock at night. I saw this post and I think we should have used this word instead of that word. And I didn't like this image. I didn't like this flower. Let's change it to that flower. And, whatever. Okay, sure. We'll delete this post. We'll do something else. But, my conversation with him was, do you think I look at my social media?
Yeah.
Like, how much attention do you think I pay to the CIPR Communications social media on a monthly basis? And, he told, I think you probably, set the tone and then you check every post and do this and do that. And I said, my team is empowered to do it. I've instilled a culture. Peter and I have instilled a vision, a mission, and values. They know through everything I do all day long, everything Peter says and does, the type of clients that we attract, the atmosphere that we've created, that's the approved messaging.
Yeah.
That's the look and feel. Here's a brand guideline. Go.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, I was obsessed with what was going out there and I did want it to, but this letting that go, it's like I see it when it pops up and I get to go, Emily, wow, this is amazing, way better than I could have ever come
Or
up
sometimes
with.
when you see one that pops up, it's like, hey, I'd rather see a little more this, a little more that, or whatever. And it's not stop or delete all the posts that aren't like this. It's just like, as you're thinking about your next set of posts, maybe here's some slight direction change or whatever, here and there, right?
Totally. And it's like my door's open if the team needs suggestions or whatever, but it is not, I let go of that piece. I'm not winning or losing my next greatest client because of one Instagram post. I may win or lose one based on, the last 12 or an overall vision, but I've got better things to worry about. So I mean, I think from an intuition perspective, that letting go perspective, it's like, trust. We talk about trust almost every episode, but like it's a big factor, right? Like, if you can trust someone and you not only like, hey, I trust you, but like in your gut, that that person can take and drive something and when they can't.
Yeah. Well,
I think that's a lot of how we organize our team now too. Like
Totally.
we know where people can fit and where they can drive, and it's like, fuck, go do the thing. Like,
Totally.
oh, my gut tells me you're not ready there.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that in terms of as a business owner, entrepreneur, generally professionally is where I probably most rely on my intuition, or I'm most successful at relying on my intuition. And, say I've had a very successful career. We have a very successful business. And I think it's because of that. But in terms of one of the conversations I'm most excited about that we're kind of having as a team right now is we've spent a lot of time creating SOPs and operating and operating procedures and this and that and all those things, which are really important. But now we're evolving to a point where we're going to start having a really deep conversation about principles. And this is really where I think intuition really fits in, because obviously there's standard operating procedures. Here's the way to do things. But then above that, there's principles. And the principles are, I don't know, we haven't defined them yet, but are really the guiding, are really what will allow our employees to thrive more intuitively. And they don't have to feel like, oh my God, am I checking every box and doing everything right and blah, 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 because it's like, overall, if I'm meeting the principle and the overarching kind of principle, again, of what we're trying to achieve or how we're trying to make our clients feel, or whatever, then you'll never be wrong, type of thing, right? And I think that's a huge area. I'm very excited about that conversation, because I think that's really where, again, it allows us to empower our staff to use their intuition for the best interest of the client, for the best interest of our agency, for the best interest, of themselves, their careers, or whatever. So, that's pretty exciting. So, I would say, intuition, sort of to switch channels here in terms of relationships and kids, probably, I would say can be more complicated. I think it's harder because it's more emotionally driven. And it's weird to say, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs feel very emotionally driven in terms of their business, but I feel like I have more of a disconnect professionally, emotionally, than I do in my family and in my family life. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, so one, just to rewind for a second, I never thought about principles as a way of empowering staff to use intuition. So I feel like that's a nice little nugget for me. I really like that. And, as a leader, I can't train someone on how to use their gut. And I feel like that's been a very powerful tool for me in terms of being a good project manager. And so I'm going to store that one away, because I think that is the reason we're doing this. So I like that. Anyways, in terms of kids, yeah, I think what I will say is, like, you have no idea what you're doing when you hear these children are
So it's
yours.
100% intuitive all the time.
Intuitively know when something is wrong. I mean, we have been extraordinarily blessed in terms of having really healthy kids. Our first trips to the hospital have been this year, and our boys are closer to 7, and so we've been quite lucky. But in those circumstances, it's like we look at each other and it's like, yeah, I think this is one of those moments, or no, I don't think it is. And what I will say, what I think helped me today prepare for things was, remember that app that we had, the Wonder Weeks app?
Yeah.
And it would say, so if you're, a new parent, or you're enter and download the Wonder Weeks app. There's a whole book. We never read the book.
It's a good
And it gives
piece of content.
it gives you these notifications, like, where it's like, you plug in when your kid was born and when it was due, and it'll say, watch out, today's an emotional day, or you're headed into an emotional period. And then it'll explain why, like, okay, at week whatever 7, now your baby is seeing shapes for the first time. And I remember being like, oh my God, like, it's so scary for them. But it really, like, ingrained in me this sense of, like, oh, like, they have no idea. And right now, I think with our kids, as they finish up grade 1, And, grade 1 has been a whole experience, as I'm sure many parents can attest to, but they're going through this emotional changes. Emotions are very big to them right now. They don't necessarily understand why they feel certain emotions at certain times. And there's these big conversations that we have to have. And I feel like you and I, in the past month, had been having a lot of conversations about how do we deal with some of these questions and what do we do? And again, we operate a lot on our gut. I think we operate as parents a lot on how would we like to receive this information, or what will we have liked. And then in the past, I feel like it was like the past week or two, even, I did a little bit of reading and sent you some articles, and the ebook that, or the audiobook that I'm listening to right now happened to, land on this chapter about that emotional development stage. And it was just all this confirmation that we're doing the right things. And I think it's because we don't wind ourselves up. We just go, okay, like in my gut, something's really wrong, or in my gut, they're going through something. And so this Wonder Week, it's like, obviously it's not for kids, it's for babies. But I always think, okay, if there was a Wonder Weeks app right now, it would be saying, oh, your kid's brain is developing in a new way. And here you.
I think as a parent, and probably as a person in a relationship, it's like, get out of your head and get into your life is probably I don't know if I made that saying up, but it's my favorite saying that I've recently. But interestingly, I had a conversation. I went for a long walk with a good friend that we talk a lot about religion and spirituality and things together when we go on our walks. And we were talking about actually this very topic and our kids, what they're going through. We have kids in the same grade. We were talking, and he sort of made a comment about like, oh, you can read a book, or in the book, there's every opinion out there in terms of professionals offering advice. So how are you supposed to know which advice is right? And to me, it was actually to what you said, is like, we'll often seek out content around a topic around our kids, and they're behaving like this, how should I, whatever. But it's really just to confirm our gut feeling it's really to confirm, we're on the right path. It's really right? It's not really to tell us what to do. It's more to just confirm, and so I always read those pieces of content and I do a gut check on it, right? And that feels right in my gut. We're on this right path. And then I just feel kind of like at ease about it, right? So, this particular friend, really good friend, love him, but he's in his head a lot, and he's always like thinking about all the different angles and the different things, whatever. And and we actually have a lot of conversations about thinking versus doing, and really intuition and is really just about just doing and flowing. I always sort of have this like vision in my mind of I'm going to be most successful and happy when I literally just like, and it's like it's almost like a dream where I like just like let everything go, my arms and my legs, and I just allow myself to float in the direction that I'm being taken. And it's like a really weird, powerful vision in my mind that I have about like sometimes, excuse me, I'm getting excited here, but sometimes literally when I'm faced with a business decision, a life decision, a couple's decision, a kid's decision, it's literally for me, just like sit quietly, close my eyes, and just like allow things to come in and allow the answers to come in. And that's really, to me, kind of the manifestation of intuition in sort of the most physical form I can think of. And it's something I do a lot. And so I guess my point is that in order to be intuitive and allow intuition and sort of follow your intuition, you also have to give yourself quiet time and space and reflection time and gut checks, and be internal a little or a lot. But be internal without listening to your mind, by actually trying to turn your mind off. So I guess that's probably where things like meditation and all other kinds of practices probably fit in. And I'm not really a meditator, but I realize that one of the things I love to do is go on long walks by myself and listen to podcasts. And I actually think that's like a very meditative activity, even though I think there's a billion ways to meditate, and just, it's not listen to some guru and breathe a certain way, isn't necessarily the only way or whatever. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many nuggets in there. I'll start with saying from an intuition piece with our kids too, I think that, you know, my advice for a parent, again, I'm not an expert, is like really lean into your intuition, because I think you and I have conversations all the time about, you know, our parents love our parents, obviously, but you know, they just did because their parents did, and then their parents did it that way, and then, you know, and just because that's how it was done to us and we turned out great doesn't mean that that's what we have to keep doing. So, you know, this intuition thing, I do think breaks traditional, you know, norms. It can, maybe sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, intuition lines up that my mom did this, so I'm going to do this, but oftentimes it doesn't. And I think that applies to kids and relationships and business. What I'll say too is I absolutely agree with kind of that meditation piece. And I recently, well, this past year, have been doing yoga. I've never done that before, and you know, has all sorts of benefits, but it has really taught me the power of breathing and to your point, letting go. My personality type is one that harbors and doesn't know how to let go, but you know, I keep receipts on it and I know, and so it's helped me with that. And then finally, the thing that kind of I thought about when you were talking about your letting go is one of the very first things you said to me on a date was, you know, we were talking about, you know, what do you need from the other individual. We're very mature. And you said, look, don't stop me. Don't stop me. And, you know, I had to sit on that and reflect what that meant. And I was okay with that. I'm independent as well, and it resonated with me. But in terms of like this intuition piece, I think you've come a long way in the last 15 years where I don't necessarily think anyone was stopping you. I think you were stopping yourself in a lot of places. And I think that is, you know, now you've embraced this don't stop me, but you've applied it to yourself. So I feel like that was just
that's a whole podcast around, like, I think, to kind of to what Christina is kind of alluding to or talking about here is that, like, I think often we stop ourselves, but we tell ourselves a story in our minds that it's somebody else stopping us. And so we've had this conversation maybe even on this podcast before around the concept of, oh, we're new parents now and I can't go work out because I must be here with my kids or whatever. That's a made up thing in my own head. And it's not reality, but that stops us. And then that's so back to kind of intuition. Then it's like all of a sudden you're not feeling good in your relationship and you're feeling like things aren't working well. And so I think sometimes you need to stop yourself and really ask yourself some hard questions. Is it really the other person, or is it me kind of like projecting onto the other person what's in my own head? And certainly if it's me projecting onto the other person what's in my own head, then you really need to really stop and really kind of listen, pay attention and figure it out. Because you could, in our previous episode on quitting, you could quit a relationship early and blame the other person and then always be in a cycle of relationships where they never work out because you're projecting your own feelings on others and they're not actually yours. So that's literally a whole really long conversation that we could have.
All right, well, trust your intuition. Don't be afraid to let go. And my intuition tells me that I have another meeting right now.
Yes, so my gut tells me it's time to finish this conversation. Let's see. Bye.
Thank you for joining in for another episode of Two Babies in a Business. CIPR Communications is a public relations and digital marketing firm partnering with clients across North America to reach their brand reputation and lead generation goals. Follow us on social at CIPR Comms and check out our website CIPRcommunications.com for more information. If you have questions or want to be part of a future podcast, reach out at media@CIPRcommunications.com. I'm James Falls, CIPR's PR specialist, and I'm looking forward to our next episode. Subscribe on your Spotify or iTunes account so you don't miss the next one.